For decades, Britain looked across the Atlantic with pride at its American colonies, 13 bustling outposts stretching from New Hampshire to Georgia. These lands were more than distant territories. They were vital cogs in the machinery of the British Empire, fueling its industry and prosperity. Ships laden with timber, tobacco and cotton sailed regularly from colonial ports, their cargoes destined for the factories and workshops of London, Liverpool and beyond. The colonies were a source of raw materials, a market for British goods, and a symbol of imperial strength. To many in Britain, the colonies were not just economic assets. They were seen as extensions of the homeland itself, bound by shared language, customs, and a deep loyalty to the crown. Families on both sides of the ocean wrote letters, traded goods, and even visited one another, reinforcing a sense of kinship that spanned the Atlantic. But the end of the 7 Years' War in 1763 changed everything. Britain emerged victorious, but the cost of war was staggering. The national debt had soared to unprecedented heights, leaving Parliament scrambling for ways to restore the kingdom's finances and maintain its far-flung empire. London now expected the colonists, who had benefited from British protection during the war, to contribute to the costs of their own defence. After all, British troops had fought and died to secure the frontiers of North America. New taxes and duties were introduced, not as punishment, but as what Parliament saw as a reasonable and necessary contribution to the empire's upkeep. The Sugar Act, the Stamp Act, and other measures were designed to share the burden of imperial costs more fairly. Yet these measures sparked outrage in America. Colonists saw them as an attack on their rights and autonomy. No taxation without representation became a rallying cry, echoing through town squares and meeting halls from Boston to Charleston. From Britain's perspective, Parliament represented all subjects of the Crown, whether or not they voted directly. This principle of virtual representation was a cornerstone of the British political system. The colonists' demands for direct representation in Parliament seemed, to many in Britain, to ignore centuries of established law and tradition. The British system had always operated on the idea that Parliament acted for the good of the whole empire. As protests grew more disruptive, what began as peaceful dissent soon turned, in British eyes, into open defiance and even lawlessness. Riots, boycotts, and attacks on officials shocked many in London, who had believed the colonists to be loyal subjects. Most in Britain believed that only a handful of agitators were causing trouble, while the vast majority of colonists remained loyal to the Crown. News from America was often filtered through official channels, downplaying the scale of unrest. Some, like the statesman Edmund Burke, urged Parliament to listen and understand colonial grievances. Burke warned that using force or ignoring the colonists' concerns could have disastrous consequences for the unity of the empire. But these voices of caution were drowned out by the prevailing belief in Parliament and among the public. British authority must be upheld and the Empire's laws respected for the good of all its subjects. The idea of a permanent break with the colonies was still unthinkable to most Britons. They could not imagine the Empire without its American heartland, nor foresee the storm that was gathering across the sea. As tensions mounted, few in Britain realized just how deep the colonial resentment ran, or how determined many Americans were to defend their rights and liberties, even if it meant challenging the might of the British Empire. The stage was set for a conflict that would shake the empire to its core, forever altering the course of history on both sides of the Atlantic. By the 1770s, colonial protests had escalated into open defiance. What began as scattered acts of resistance against new taxes and regulations had grown into a widespread movement, challenging the very authority of the British Crown. From London's perspective, the colonies, once loyal and prosperous, now seemed to be slipping out of control, their actions increasingly bold and unpredictable. Incidents like the Boston Massacre were seen in Britain as tragic results of unruly mobs confronting soldiers keeping order. British officials and citizens alike viewed these events not as heroic stands for liberty, but as dangerous outbreaks of violence that threatened the stability of the empire. The soldiers, many believed, had been provoked beyond endurance by lawless crowds. The Boston Tea Party, however, crossed a line. Destroying East India Company property was viewed as outright lawlessness. To the British, this was not a protest, but a direct attack on private property and the rule of law. The loss of valuable tea was not just an economic blow, but a symbolic challenge to British authority and commercial interests. The government responded with the coercive acts, closing Boston's port and tightening royal control over Massachusetts. These measures, known in America as the Intolerable Acts, were intended to send a clear message. The Crown would not tolerate open defiance. British leaders hoped that swift, decisive action would restore order and deter further rebellion in the other colonies. These were not meant as tyranny, but as necessary steps to restore order and uphold the law. Parliament believed it was acting with restraint, seeking to protect loyal subjects and maintain the integrity of the empire. Many in Britain saw the measures as justified, even moderate given the scale of colonial unrest. Instead, the measures united the colonies in resistance, with the First Continental Congress organizing boycotts and coordinated opposition. Rather than isolating Massachusetts, the coercive acts convinced many colonists that their rights were under threat everywhere. The seeds of unity and shared purpose began to take root across the Atlantic. In Britain, it became clear this was no longer about taxes, but a rebellion against the Crown's authority. Newspapers reported with alarm on the growing unrest, and debates in Parliament grew heated. The realization dawned that the conflict was about the very nature of British rule in America. King George III was determined to preserve the empire and saw colonial leaders as dangerous agitators. He believed that giving in to their demands would only encourage further disobedience, not just in America, but throughout the empire. The king's resolve hardened as he watched the situation deteriorate. Public opinion largely supported the king, though anxiety about war was growing. Many Britons felt a sense of national pride and loyalty, but there was also fear. Fear of the costs of war and of losing the colonies that had contributed so much to Britain's wealth and power. Many believed a show of force would quickly end the unrest, underestimating colonial resolve. British leaders and military planners assumed that the colonists, faced with the might of the world's most powerful army and navy, would soon back down. Few anticipated the depth of colonial determination or the willingness to fight for their rights. The first shots at Lexington and Concord in 1775 marked the shift from protest to war. What had been a political crisis now became an armed conflict, with both sides convinced of the justice of their cause. The news of bloodshed shocked Britain, making it clear that reconciliation would not come easily. Few in Britain had wanted open conflict, but now it seemed necessary to maintain imperial unity. The hope for a peaceful solution faded as the reality of war set in, and the government prepared for a long and costly struggle. The hope for reconciliation faded as the colonies moved toward revolution. The Declaration of Independence, when it came, would be seen in Britain as a shocking act of betrayal, the final break in a relationship that had once seemed unshakable. Britain braced for a war it had never truly expected, facing not just a military challenge but a crisis of identity and empire that would echo for generations. Not all colonists supported the revolution. Many remained loyal to the Crown, holding fast to their beliefs. Loyalists came from all backgrounds and walks of life. Officials, merchants, recent immigrants, and ordinary farmers who valued British stability and order. For them, independence threatened chaos and the loss of their rights and security. Loyalists aided the British war effort, providing intelligence, supplies, and even fighting alongside regular troops in battle. Their local knowledge was crucial, but their loyalty came at great personal risk. In Patriot-controlled areas, Loyalists faced persecution, violence, and confiscation of property. Many were forced to flee, their lives upended by the Civil War raging around them. Loyalist regiments fought bravely, believing they defended not just the king, but their homes and way of life. The conflict was deeply personal. Families and communities were torn apart. Branded as traitors by patriots, Loyalists endured harsh reprisals if captured. Even under British protection, their safety was never certain or guaranteed. The war left colonial society fractured, with Loyalists caught between two worlds. Their sacrifices were immense, but often overlooked in the larger story of revolution. The American Revolution soon became a global conflict as France, Spain, and the Netherlands joined the fight against Britain, turning a colonial rebellion into a worldwide struggle. British forces were stretched thin, defending far-flung interests from the West Indies to India and across the Mediterranean. Gibraltar, controlling the entrance to the Mediterranean Sea, became a critical battleground for the warring powers. Spain and France laid siege to Gibraltar in 1779, determined to reclaim the strategic fortress for themselves. The siege lasted over 3 years, testing the endurance and resolve of the British garrison under General Elliot. Despite relentless bombardment, starvation, and disease, the defenders held out, using daring raids and innovative tactics to survive. The Royal Navy broke the blockade several times, ensuring Gibraltar's survival and keeping hope alive. The defense of Gibraltar became a lasting symbol of British resilience and national pride. While the war in America faltered, Gibraltar's stand boosted national morale back home in Britain. The successful defense in 1783 secured Britain's hold on this vital outpost for generations to come. Gibraltar's survival showcased British determination, even as the empire faced setbacks and challenges elsewhere. The siege did not change the outcome in America, but it preserved a key symbol of British power and influence. Even in defeat, Britain proved it could defend its global interests and maintain its presence on the world stage. The Treaty of Paris in 1783 brought an official end to the American Revolutionary War, marking a pivotal moment in world history. The agreement recognized American independence, a bitter and humiliating loss for Britain, which had once ruled the 13 colonies with confidence and authority. For many it was a time of celebration and hope, but for others it marked the beginning of a long and difficult ordeal. For the Loyalists, those colonists who had remained faithful to the British Crown, the treaty brought disaster. They faced persecution from their neighbours, the confiscation of their property, and, in many cases, violent harassment. Families were torn apart, livelihoods destroyed, and entire communities uprooted as the new American government and its supporters sought to punish those seen as traitors to the cause of independence. Tens of thousands of Loyalists, unwilling or unable to remain in the new United States, fled to British territories. This mass migration, known as the Loyalist Exodus, saw families boarding crowded ships, leaving behind everything they had ever known. Most sought refuge in Nova Scotia and Quebec, where the British government promised them safety and a chance to rebuild their lives. The British government, eager to reward their loyalty and strengthen its hold in North America, offered land grants, supplies, and support to the refugees. Loyalists faced harsh, unfamiliar wilderness, but with determination and resilience they began to carve out new settlements, building log cabins and establishing communities from scratch. Their arrival dramatically reshaped the Canadian landscape. The influx of Loyalists led to the creation of New Brunswick as a separate colony and the division of Quebec into Upper and Lower Canada, laying the groundwork for the future provinces. These changes would have a lasting impact on the political and cultural development of Canada. United Empire Loyalists brought with them British customs, values, and a fierce loyalty to the Crown. They established schools, churches, and local governments modelled after British institutions, helping to shape a distinctly Canadian identity rooted in tradition and allegiance to Britain. Their resolve and sense of identity were tested once again during the War of 1812, when the United States invaded Canada. The threat of American expansion reignited old fears and united the Loyalists and their descendants in defense of their new homeland. Loyalists and their children formed the backbone of the Canadian militia, standing shoulder to shoulder with other settlers. They drilled with muskets, built defenses, and prepared to defend their homes and families from invasion, drawing on their hard-won experience from the Revolution. Their memories of revolution and exile fueled a fierce determination to resist American expansion. Loyalist leaders inspired their communities, and the militia's courage became legendary in the defense of Canada. The Loyalists' stand in 1812 was crucial. Their bravery and unity ensured that Canada remained distinct from its southern neighbour, preserving a separate identity and future for generations to come. Today, their legacy endures in monuments, traditions, and the very fabric of Canadian society, a testament to enduring allegiance and the profound lasting impact of the American Revolution on North America. Out of loss and hardship, the Loyalists forged a new future for themselves and for Canada, leaving a legacy of resilience, hope, and unwavering loyalty that continues to shape the nation to this day.